I would like to introduce our panelists for this afternoon's discussion on election integrity. All are extremely accomplished individuals, so I'm going to highlight some of their achievements. Mary Jane Arrington has lived in Osceola County for 41 years. She has been on the Osceola Board of County Commissioners, the Toho Water Authority, and was elected in 2008 as Supervisor of Elections. She is involved in dozens of civic and government groups. She is a graduate of UCF with a master's degree from Florida State. Welcome, Mary Jane Arrington. If you can please come join us. Chris Anderson of Seminole County has been Supervisor of Elections for 5 years. He is a decorated Army combat veteran. When Supervisor Anderson was elected to office in 2020, he became the first African-American constitutional officer in history of Seminole County. He has completed the John F. Kennedy School for Public Leadership program at Harvard University and has his Master of Florida certification in election administration from Florida State University. Welcome, Christopher Anderson. Alan Hayes, Lake County Election Supervisor, is a Coast Guard veteran who went on to graduate from the University of Florida with a dental degree. After his career as a dentist in Lake County, Alan served the Florida House and later the Florida Senate. He was elected Supervisor of Elections in 2016 and is presently running for re-election. Alan is very active in his community and has been a Kiwanis for 35 years. Please join us. Welcome, Alan. And now, for our newly retired Orange County Supervisor of Elections, Tiger Bay member, Bill Cowles. Bill was named by the Orlando Sentinel as the gold standard as elections chief. For nearly 3 decades, he has served the citizens of Orange County, having overseen 96 elections. Since 1996, he leaves the office as the longest serving person in the job's history. Bill is proud of upgrading the county's voting system and says that his staff has a total of 425 years of experience. That's pretty old. Bill is a proud UCF grad and is a past president of the Florida Supervisor of Elections Association. Please join us. Welcome all. Our moderator is Stewart Moore, who anchors the 6, 7, and 11 p.m. newscast for WESH 2 News. He has been with WESH for 13 years, covering everything from hurricanes, presidential elections in Florida, and that's saying something, and the Pulse nightclub tragedy. This South Carolina native is a graduate of Florida State University. He has multiple Emmy Award winner for reporting and is part of the 4 Edward Murrow Awards that WESH has earned. Please welcome our moderator, Stewart Moore.
Great job to Brittany. I know it's not always easy jumping up here in front of people and being able to do this, but you did a wonderful job, so please give her a quick round of applause. And thank you guys once again for allowing me to moderate a meaningful discussion here at Tiger Bay Club. To say democracy and voting purity is at question would be an understatement in what's happening right now, especially the latter, as people continue to accuse of crimes happening at the ballot box. Today, hopefully we can start evening that thing out and getting back to what we would all consider a normal type practice when it comes to Election Day. We are hoping to change the perception of the few who have now become some of the loudest people in the room. We want to welcome our Supervisors of Elections once again from 4 of our Central Florida counties. Their bios that you just heard, and they're also attached, and you can find them on their websites. If you click on their websites, their face is the first thing that you will see right next to register to vote. There we go. The 3 out of, he's still on the website. Yeah, he's like emeritus version of it. Ladies, first, I would like to let people give a quick opening statement as we start our afternoon. Please welcome the Osceola County, Miss Mary Jane Arrington, for some opening remarks.
Good. Thank you. I'm at a disadvantage. I'm the only one that has to hold my microphone. So I always say these things are sexist. You want me to put it on your belt? I'm a hold. There's nothing more important in our country than voting. And I believe that voting should be efficient, secure, and transparent. We work very hard in all 4 counties to deliver that to you. It is a changing landscape with changing laws on a yearly basis that we have to deal with, plus the many other diversities that we deal with. Our populations are diverse and becoming more diverse, and that is also something that we have to address. The main thing, the hardest thing of our job, I think, is getting information out. We all receive our information in so many different ways today. Our parents received it from the 6 o'clock news. Do you remember when the news was 15 minutes and then it was over? Now there are just so many avenues we have to try and reach people, especially the younger population, and it really makes our job more challenging every day.
We would love for you to also continue to watch the news where you can find out all the information.
More than 15 minutes, right?
We got a lot of minutes on there, I'll tell you that much. We also just heard that, obviously our retired superintendent, Mr. Bill Cowles, and his office had 435 years. I did hear a jeer that said he has 400 of them. I will allow him for some opening statements.
Feels that way. Good afternoon. And chronically, my last presidential election will have been the 2020 election. And it is so sad that we're still not over it. We have not finished that discussion. But at least the discussion is, it's not here, it's elsewhere. Because the part is, if it happens someplace else, it must be happening here. And that's where we're here to tell you it's not happening here as it is happening elsewhere. And then finally, Stewart, I would say, yes, you got more news time, but the speed of news also has that confusion with voters, because media needs to be very clear where it's happening and where and compared to what's happening.
And people believe social media so fast.
That's
and
the other.
From a source that may not necessarily be the trusted one.
Exactly.
But wonderful point. Now from Seminole County, Mr. Chris Anderson.
I'm Chris Anderson. I'm the Seminole County Supervisor of Elections, and I'm so happy to be here. This is my first time being here, and have an opportunity to speak. So thank you for the invitation. So, when I talk about voting, I want to drive home something. Voting is the physical representation of your ideals, your beliefs, and your principles. The reason why you vote is because you believe you're going to make a difference. You're going to change something for you, for the people around you, your family. So that's why we take such pride in what it is that we do. When I had the opportunity to testify in front of the 118th Congress Election Subcommittee on House Administration, they asked me, said, Chris, what made the 2022 election cycle successful? And I was sitting in between the Secretary of State for Louisiana and the Secretary of State of Ohio, and they had their papers all prepared. And I said I was going to memorize mine because I wanted to represent the great state of Florida. And they said a lot of processes, and I wanted to remind them the people are what make elections safe. We have to hire thousands of election workers to come together in a bipartisan method. We need Democrats, we need Republicans, we need MPAs and Libertarians and any other party to come together to make the largest bipartisan event take place in the county. I told them, I said, I trained 2,762 election workers. That's more than all of you in this building, the executive branch and the Supreme Court put together, and we get it done. So I wanted to remind them that it's of, by, and for the people. So as we talk about things today, you're going to hear us say and drive home the message of the importance of voting, and I'm just so happy to be here. So thank you again.
Chris, thank you so much. From Lake County and former member of the Florida House and Senate, Mr. Alan Hayes.
Thank you. And I appreciate very much you caring enough that you'll come out here and learn the truth from your trusted source of election information. I have the privilege of being the head coach of a team of champions there in Lake County, a group of men and women that are dedicated every day of the week to excellence in elections administration. There's not another office anywhere in the state of Florida that does it any better than we do. And I will say that again, but I will add, there are a lot of offices, thankfully, most all of the offices in Florida do it just as well as we do. but none of them do it any better. But literally, folks, our system of elections is the bedrock of our republic. We have to have a trusted system of elections. Here in Florida, you've heard it all, that we are the model for the nation. That is not just bluster. That is fact. We are the model for the nation. And this man right here and his colleagues, that they're veterans of that 2000 election, were the ones that have built what we have today. Thank you, Bill. Sincerely appreciate it. Y'all deserve it. Those of us that have come along later we're fortunate to have learned from those guys there. One of the untold secrets that I want the entire state of Florida to know is the group of 67 supervisors of elections in this state are a true team. We work together. I've been attending those meetings now for 8 years. Not one time have I heard any reference to any political party. We don't care. We're just like those guys wearing black and white stripes on the football field. It makes no difference what color jersey you're wearing. You violate the rule, we're going to throw a flag on you. But most importantly, we're going to prepare the table so that your election day experience is like a feast. You come in, you get it done, you go home and think, wow, that was nice. That's our goal. We thank you for caring enough to come out today to listen and learn about it.
Thank you so much. You've clearly not seen ACC refs this year, but I'll digress, and that's another day. In the state of Florida, we have between 13 and 14 million registered voters at any given time. Now, in the wake of the 2020 election, Governor DeSantis launched an election crimes and security task force, and they claim on their website to have made more than 200 arrests, most of which are people who thought that they legally had their rights restored and were able to vote, and were also issued voter ID cards. This question is for you, Mr. Hayes, because I know you have something to say on this topic. Does Florida have an election security problem that could change the outcome of an election?
No. Our elections in Florida are secure.
When you hear people questioning that, and when you see investigations launched that, between 14 million voters, 200 people arrested, most of which thought they could legally vote, do you question the fact that those things are even created?
Stewart, unfortunately, I'm going to go back into my legislative experiences. I felt like at the time when Amendment 4 passed, the legislature should have created a database that incorporated all of the sentences of felons that have been committed since a certain date. You can't just go indefinitely. They should have established a cutoff date, just an arbitrary date, whether it be January 1st of 1970, 1980, 1990, whatever time it might have been, and said, listen, if your crime was committed and it didn't involve murder or sex prior to that time, then here, come on and vote. I mean, let's be real. And then after that, we fund a database establishment with the district attorneys and the clerks of the court all across the state, give us all of the data, the sentence and the terms of those sentences, all of it, and then everybody has to complete the terms of those sentences. And you could have a central clearinghouse for that information. Those people deserve to know whether they can vote legally or not, and the system could have been established. It's not too late, but it should have been done a long time ago.
Ms. Arrington, you have an influx of people moving here from Puerto Rico who are instantly eligible to vote. What type of questions are your office receiving about the integrity of casting a ballot, and how are you answering those questions?
Well, every voter, once they register to vote, is vetted by the state. The state's job is to make sure that that person is eligible to vote. They have the database to do that. We in our offices do not. So that is the state's job. And if you are a citizen of Puerto Rico, you are a citizen of the United States. So therefore, you may register to vote and vote.
Mr. Anderson, I am a Seminole County voter. I vote by mail. How do I know that my vote is counted? How do I know it's secure? And are there safeguards to prevent someone from changing selections that I made?
Absolutely. We in every county, we establish a canvassing board. And that canvassing board consists of the supervisor of elections, the chairman of the Board of County Commission, and a county judge actually has to chair that board. And that board's put together because it's their job to serve as the voters' representation in your absence. So if there's an issue with your ballot, they will make a determination of voter intent. They also have to be there while those ballots are being opened and being counted. No ballot can be opened and counted without a canvassing board member being present. And the last and the most important piece is it's done in front of the public. You can be there. You can come, you can hang out, and you get to see massive amounts of paper move efficiently throughout the room. And it's open to the public. We are the most transparent form of government. You can go sit in an early voting site and watch it, sit in an election day poll, and you can watch vote by mail. So that is the method in which we keep vote by mail safe. And lastly, you can track your ballot. It's the only form of voting where you can track it. So with ballot tracks, you can sign up, and instead of you having to call us to see if it counted, we call you and we say, guess what? We got it. Guess what? It's been counted, and it shows your voting history. So it's in Florida, as Alan said, we really have become comprehensive in the way we service our voters.
Let me ask you a quick follow-up. Excuse me. What about drop boxes?
So secure ballot intake stations, as we formerly call them, drop boxes. You know, they can be placed out at any place that can serve as an early voting location, and they must be at an early voting location, and they have to be taken back in at the close. And they're secure because a person has to be standing right next to them at all times. As a matter of fact, all of us here are $25,000 personally liable if that box or secure ballot intake station is not being monitored. And when they're counted at the end of the night, they're recorded. And when they come back to us, we count them for a chain of custody. So we have definitely parameters in place to keep your vote safe.
Mr. Cowles, what do you point to as causing the hysteria that is some questioning the integrity of elections?
Well, you answered that question earlier with social media on it. The other part too is I've always said misinformation is also a campaign tool, and it's being used to discourage people from voting. It's discouraging people from participating in the process or giving them doubt about the process, which then leads back to questioning us. The other part too is, you know, the Florida legislature in the last 3 legislative sessions after doing a very good election in 2020 have made changes. And sometimes those changes are not well defined. I mean, how many of you already know that if you not requested a new vote by mail ballot this year, your request was wiped out? Many of us are sitting here going into the presidential preference primary with the lowest number of vote by mail requests because the way the legislation was changed, that you have to request it every election cycle. And then there's actually a bill out there right now that said you would have to ask for it prior to each election, which in some cases we don't have enough time to process it between the primary and the general. So again, the information of change, that's where we have to be vocal about what the changes are. But again, Orange County voters, we sent you a new notice of elections that told you about the vote by mail. How many threw? Because it was just junk mail and haven't followed through on it. So the changes is what has to be communicated over and over and over.
You should have put your face on it. Maybe people wouldn't have thrown it away so fast. Mr. Hayes, obviously, you know, you get a lot of calls to your office, I imagine. What are some people saying, and how do you combat the misinformation that they spew to your workers? And is it a case where they're going to be unhappy regardless if their candidate loses?
Well, the first thing we do is we thank them for calling us because we want to be their trusted source of information. And we ask you, help us spread the word. If there are any questions about the voting process itself or anything having to do with the election, please call your local supervisor's office. So we thank them for that. My staff has prepared a list of 21 election security points, the facts. We call it election facts. And they have that right there at their fingertips. If someone calls, asks a question, they can pick that sheet up. They have a reference. Those election facts are on the home. There you go. It's on the homepage of our website. We want people to know the truth. There's a scripture passage, John 8:32 says, you shall know the truth and the truth will set you free. And we believe in that completely. And we're going to carry it out every day that we go to work.
That's our first pastor for the night. Mr. Arrington.
I'll take up a collection pretty soon.
Ms. Arrington, statewide, we have seen very few incidents where people were arrested and charged with casting multiple ballots. Is that because they are the only ones who are getting caught, or is that because people just are not casting multiple ballots?
It is rare, but also we did have a system in place that we used called ERIC that really helped us find these people who would, and usually the way they do it is they vote in 2 states. And Eric was very helpful in helping us identify these voters who possibly voted in 2 states. We no longer participate in that multi-state database, so I think it will be harder, but it is rare that it happens. And I always tell people, if we don't catch you on the front side, we're going to catch you on the back.
Mr. Anderson, why do you think we hear more about voter and voting integrity during presidential election years versus non-presidential election years?
Get you to pay attention, right? Want to try and draw you in and try to confuse you as to what's going on. Again, I'm going to go back to what Alan said about, if you see something on social media or you hear something, give us a call. We looked at a study, 70% bad information is more likely by 70% to be spread more than good information, right? So that's an issue for us. So you want to give your SOE a call when you see something that is questionable. But I think it's happening because, we're looking at mis, dis, and malinformation. They're wanting to try and get to shift you one way or the other. And, that's a problem that we try to address by making sure that we're constantly putting out information. The Florida Supervisor of Elections Association, we established a public relations committee so we could come together as one collective voice to combat that mis, dis, and malinformation so that it's coming from all of us and saying, here's the truth, and it shall set you free.
Mr. Cowles, do you think that there's a way that technology can help us become more transparent when it comes to casting and counting votes and then give the public a better eye view as to what's happening?
Well, I think we've kind of answered it in several different ways. And in terms as a person who has gone through 20, you want this one? Yeah. Okay, well, he was telling me depending on which one. So, the technology has already brought us further along than we ever were. Because obviously your station is watching my results as they come in and broadcasting them. So we've got technology that helps the process. And could it go further? Sure. But we've talked about, first off, you can come and watch. You could probably log on and watch the whole process, whether it be your ballot in the early voting process, and you're supposed to turn your phone off. My next. Oh, it's the president of the Florida State Association of Supervisors of Elections.
Let's have him chime in.
I can guess what it's going to be. But technology has moved forward. It can move us even further. One is when you vote early and you vote on election day, you're putting your ballot to a machine and it is scanning it and it's letting you know if you didn't fill it in properly. When I say properly, meaning fill in the oval instead of putting a check mark or an X on it. We've already talked about the vote by mail. The vote by mail, we've even made it so that if your signature doesn't match, you have a chance to fix it. If you didn't sign it, believe it or not, people do not sign it. You have a chance to fix. And that's that tracking system can also tell you the status on it. So again, the voter already has the opportunity to see it. The question becomes, which the big argument around the country is, do you allow machines? Machines. Who builds the machines? Where do the pieces come from? But those machines are tested before every single election. And guess how many members of the public attend? How many candidates who are going to be on the ballot come and check it out? Very few. Okay, so there are checks and balances in the process. And again, I think we're in this argument today because of what's happened elsewhere about voting systems, because in 2000 it was the punch cards. Today it's paper ballots, machine counted or hand counted. And that's going to be the debate. But we've proven in Florida with the testing of our equipment at the state level, we can't just go out and buy equipment. We can only buy equipment that has been certified by the state of Florida. Other states will depend on the Federal Elections Assistance Commission, but Florida, they test the equipment before a county is allowed to purchase it. And so it's gone through that testing, and that's why we've been very successful in Florida when 2008, when we went to all paper all the time, because you can recreate an election with a piece of paper at any time.
When you look at,
I might add this.
please,
If anybody tells you that our tabulation systems have been hacked, they don't know what they're talking about. You can tell them I said so. They don't know what they're talking about. Those tabulation systems are never connected to the internet. Hello.
I want to follow up on that because, as we all know, Fox News paid a huge payout for accusing, a vote tabulation system of possible nefarious activities, or just exposing that it possibly could have been involved with that sort of thing. Is the damage already done from people's belief that the machines will be able to do it? And how do you restore that faith?
To me, the saddest thing about the 2020 election is the fact that so many people have had their confidence in the system undermined by these people that have yet to put up any credible evidence. And I'm reminded of Mark Twain when he said, it's easier to fool someone than it is to convince someone they've been fooled. And too many of the American public have bought into the lies that have been propagated by those who tell you all of these crazy stories, but they don't give you any evidence. I said it publicly before, I'll say it again. It's time for them to either put up or shut up. And frankly, the time to put up is gone. So they just need to shut up.
Yes, ma'am.
The other thing we do after every election, and that's every supervisor in the state of Florida, is we audit our election. Some of us do 100% audit, where we recount every ballot to make sure that it was counted right. Or some of us do a race and pick certain precincts, and we hand count to see if the count is right. And in my 16 years, the count has always been dead on.
Who shows up for that?
No
Nobody.
one.
It's just assumed. Only time they show up is if it's a recount, and a recount overrides the audit. There are sometimes individuals who show up, but they are probably for some other reason.
Mr. Anderson, go ahead, please.
And I will add to that, in Seminole County, I'm going to put together a bipartisan elections commission. I'm going to bring Democrats, Republicans, MPAs. I'm going to ask everyone to come together because I think it's time for Seminole County to get to that 100% audit. It's going to cost us about $200,000 to do that. Now, I got to go convince 5 commissioners to give that money to me. And I think if they hear this coming from a bipartisan group of advisory board that can say, you know what, we've taken a look and we think that this is something that we should do, that they'd be more advantageous to fund that to happen because the equipment is out there to do it. But we audit our elections. And another thing we do is we staff our precincts. No precinct is outweighed by one party. You have to, when ballots are transferred, they're done by different party affiliations. When we're counting vote by mails, there's Democrat, Republican, no one's sitting next to each other. There's these small checks and balances that we put in place and that we train to make sure that your elections are safe. And that's what we would ask. When I see a poll watcher, that's a time for me to say, well, if you really want to know what we do, you need to come on this side of the aisle, right? You can be an election worker and I'll show you how we do things. So, I would say that as my colleagues have spoken, we have such a comprehensive system that, it's open that you just need to come and see it. And I agree with Alan. It's time to shut up because we've proven ourselves.
You mentioned come be an election worker. You saw in Georgia, those 2 election workers who were threatened and can't even live by their own names in their own homes anymore. What do you tell your staff when they sign up to work for you?
I got your back. Period. I got your back. We put a safety awareness training in our clerk training. And this year we're going to open it up to all of our election workers. I'm going to tell you right now, there is some legislation that needs to be changed as well. Florida State Statute 790.06 says that you cannot bring a firearm into a polling place, right? Well, in the state of Florida, now you can carry a firearm and you don't even need a concealed weapons permit. So on Tuesday, I can't bring it into the church, but on Sunday, I can. On Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, I can. And if you are an individual who wants to carry a firearm and you want to try and keep yourself safe, now I'm in a position where I have to make sure that that law is abided by. But now I have to make sure that the election workers are abiding by that law as well. So I think, you know what? Level the playing field. I can tell you from 13 years of law enforcement experience, if we're talking about threats to election workers and possible threats of violence in a polling location, from an active shooter perspective, having trained and taught it, the only thing that stops an active shooter is someone else with a firearm. So, and it doesn't have to be a firearm that a person can have a threat by. They can pick a chair up, they can pick up a voting booth, they can do all those different things. The laws in Florida say you don't have a duty to retreat. You can stand your ground. So if we've given all these rights to our citizens, let's give them to our election workers. And lastly, Senate Bill 562 is sitting in a committee right now, which is hopefully going to offer some protections for our election workers from a legislative perspective and keep their information private. So, I know Alan can speak more educatedly on that as our legislative chair.
Mr. Hayes?
We are in the process right now of working with the senators and the House members on Senate Bill 562 to do just what Chris was talking about, extending protections to the election workers. We also have the authority as the supervisors of elections, and the clerk in each polling place is the person in charge. Each polling place has a deputy there as well, and between the deputy and the clerk, they're prime. They are the two people in charge of maintaining decorum in the polling place. As the supervisor, I can remove the authorization for any person that has been appointed as a poll watcher. Just because they're a poll watcher doesn't mean it can't be rescinded. And I have on 2 different occasions have rescinded the authorization for them to be. So that sends a message to our election workers, I've got your back. People are not going to get away with coming in here and creating disturbances and defying the rules of operation. That clerk has to maintain the order in the thing. And so we're working with the legislators right now, and it remains to be seen how it's going to turn out, but we'll get there somehow.
Ms. Arrington, has your office had to deal with any threats?
No, just disruptive voters and candidates. It's one of our big challenges is good polling locations. And we have found churches are much less likely to let us use them because some of our voters can't behave themselves.
Nice. One of the things that we like to ask people to do, particularly the developers, when you're developing a subdivision, please, please, please put a clubhouse in there that has a room big enough that we can use it as a polling place.
That's Lake Nona and Horizon West, please.
And it runs from Pinellas County to Titusville and the whole state. We need that definitely in the development community.
Yes. It's one of those things that maybe people don't always think about when they're looking at, where you go to vote. Most of the time in schools and churches in my past and what I've experienced. But as we continue to grow, especially in this community, those could be limited options at some points. I want to open things up now to some of you who may have questions for our supervisors of elections. Does anyone have a question off the top of their head as we get things rolling? Yes, sir. Mr. Rosser.
You're doing a great job being cheerleaders. However, there's got to be some bad sides, some dirty secrets, some things that keep you up at night. All of us have jobs. It's not always rosy. I want to hear about things that keep you up at night, things that went wrong, and what did you deal with, Mom?
Polling places.
We just talked about them like that keeps, and let me tell you why. So it's a domino effect, right? So when there's bad behavior taking place at the polling place, when we come back around the next election year, say, hey, you want to do it? They're like, nope. So now we just lost that polling place. So now guess what we have to do? We got to go out and find another one. I put 31,000 miles on my car last year, which was a brand new car, trying to locate polling places and early voting sites. Once I find the other one, and I may have to pay for it, so now my budget increases. Also, now I have to notify those voters. Now I have to spend your tax dollars to tell those voters that they moved, that your polling place moved. And guess what happens to the clerks inside and the election workers? They're going to get yelled at because, doggone it, Chris, Bill, and Mary Jane and Alan have moved my precinct again. Why do they keep doing that? And we don't get the opportunity to pass the buck, because they go on the website and they see our faces minus Bill's, right? Right?
That's why I
And they
vote
get
by
to
mail
blame
now,
us, right?
because I've changed locations so many times before.
Absolutely. Well, that's what's causing it, is because they don't want to participate because of this political environment is so divisive. They don't want to be involved. Polling places really keep us up at night. Election workers. We were just talking about the threats. We have to have election workers. I'm going to sum it up real quick and let my colleagues speak. We have a very limited amount of staff. They're going to put an election package together. They're going to put it in the hands of hundreds, if not thousands, of election workers and hope it goes well. We're going to train them for 4 hours and sometimes maybe 8 hours. And that can keep you up at night wondering if you gave them enough information to get the job done and they feel safe enough to make it happen.
Let me just piggyback on that for a second. I've already warned the staff I left behind. We've seen it in the past. If abortion makes the ballot, polling places will disappear because churches will not want that activity on their property. So when you talk about the fact that we have these issues with the polling places are just temporary locations. The other part too is Orange County Elections Office, 55 full-time staff. You bring in early voting workers, which we haven't talked about, and you bring in poll workers. I'm signing a payroll in an election time of 3,600 to 3,800 workers. And none of them are really under my direct control, as Chris has said, and you really worry about procedures and processes being done as we temporarily train them.
Ms. Arrington?
We're event planners.
That's right.
Every 2 years, we throw huge parties. We invite an inordinate amount of people. I invite 250,000. Nobody has to RSVP, and you don't know how they're going to go vote. And polling places and early voting sites, lines drive me crazy. In 2012, the last voter in Osceola County voted at 11:03. Mr. Cowles can beat that. UCF when the last midnight or?
Well, I was going to think about the UCF when I was thinking about 2018 when we had like 13 amendments on the ballot. And you show up at a polling place and you haven't read them. You say we have polling place stay open until after midnight just because people were struggling to read those amendments.
So that was what mail ballots were great about, because half the voters in Osceola County used to vote by mail.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to be true this year.
So one of the wonderful things that I know we've done in Orange County is educate younger people on voting and really having them participate right at their schools and then hopefully get in. But we are still seeing this lack of engagement with youth. Could you all talk about some of the ways you're trying to, when we're not in an election, really engage citizens in the voting process?
You know, I've decided to take some dance lessons, and I'm gonna go on TikTok, okay? And that's where you gotta go catch them at. You gotta get on social media, right? Because that's where that phone is. You know, I have an 11, 13, and 19-year-old, and every time I'm calling them, they're like, oh, what was that? You know, because they're there, right? So you gotta go to where they are and meet them. And then you gotta translate it in a way that they understand it. But the fact of the matter is, when you do get them engaged, they're only really interested at the top. And we need them to take a look at everything at the bottom, right? So it's a two-pronged process, but you know, we all go into the schools and we give the spiels to tell them to get involved and to get active and to vote. And what they're really looking for is they're looking for that reason why. And what turns them off is, quite frankly, when they see those of us sitting in elected positions doing the wrong thing, or they don't see us keeping our word or doing what's right. You know, I talked to young people the other day about this. I said, sometimes one bad apple can spoil the bunch. I come from law enforcement, so I know how that feels. We also got to make sure that we're holding our leaders accountable. They're going to do what they say they're going to do. So for young people, they feel like they don't see no reciprocity, nothing's happening, right? So if we can start to engage them in a way and tell them, look, we're going to do what we say we're going to do. We're going to show up for you. We're going to listen, right? We're going to meet you where you are. I think you'll see them get more involved.
And if you post on TikTok, we will all watch whatever it is.
In our office, we have a full-time person that is outreach coordinator, and we engage in civic clubs. We have programs for them, whether it be Rotary, Kiwanis, or Garden Club, or whatever it might be. We do the social media gigs as well. We have on our website a educational resources section. We do little elections in 2 minutes or less, and we try to pick different parts of it and just gives people a snippet. Most people don't want to hear a 10-minute oration. I'm certainly not looking at my bald head for that long. And so we try to give it to them in little snippets and go from there. But trying to get the message out year round, or at least trying to have the information there that they can find it. We are just the custodians of the system that you guys have hired us to administer. And we feel like that we owe it to you to make sure that you can utilize that system in the best way to maximize the better effects of it.
Good afternoon, lady and gentlemen. Thank you for educating us more. I understand you said that the Florida machines are tested, but in other areas, we hear this information about intruding on the voting process from out of the country. Are all machines tested or just the Florida ones?
So I guess go back to that principle that the Constitution of the United States says that the federal election day will be the first Tuesday after the first Monday. After that, you 50 states and territories and all go write your own laws, your own rules. So we don't have a federal election that's overseen. Now we have, after the 2000 elections, we got the Federal Elections Assistance Commission that does testing so that states that can't afford to do that could go to them for testing. But each state makes their own decision as to whether they're testing, who's testing them, and what standards they meet. And that's where Florida has always been their own. And the other problem is too, remember, we're only using these machines ideally twice every 4 years cycle. So there's not a lot of companies that want to invest in this system. And so that's why there's only about 3 or 4 major vendors right now that are, and it costs money to test. And so these companies, like the ones all of us have, are tested at the federal level because other states are using it. But Florida requires them to come in and pay again to be certified in Florida. So every machine in Florida is tested. I can't answer right now for the 49 other states whether they use the federal or they don't do it.
A lot of people happy about that response out of you, Mr. Cowles. We have a question to our left.
Thanks so much for you all being here today. All right, so Bill Cowles, first of all, you're too young to retire. You should not have retired. All right, so question, why do I go to vote in a city election at a different polling place and different folks are overseeing that process? How come they can't trust it with you guys?
Orange County, and each of them are a little different. First off, Mary Jane only has 2 cities. We have 13 in Orange County. And so, again, those elections are, in Orange County, we created a municipal election day. And so those elections are in March. But those cities are contracting with us. It's trained poll workers, but it's their canvassing boards that are canvassing the results. Okay, so there is oversight on the process, and it is all falling under the statutes for the elections. Cities in Orange County, they're poor. They can't afford to open up all my polling places. So it's easier to take, we just did City of Orlando, they got a bonus this time because House 35 primary was on the first of their elections. But they consolidate down, which then does confuse the voter as to where to go. But they were sent voter information cards that told them where their polling place was, sample ballots with it all on there. The cities should do more of advocating where their polling places are in their elections.
I do everything for those 2 cities. They love it.
Plus, they piggyback with the November election,
Yeah,
the primary in general.
Right, we're in August and November.
In Seminole's case, we have 7 cities, 4 on the presidential, and I have AOL, Altamont, Oviedo, and Lake Mary that have elections, that could have elections in off years. Last time, there's 10 precincts in Oviedo. they decided to consolidate them into 3. That makes it very difficult on us, and it created a lot of confusion. The second thing they did is instead of sending a sample ballot to everyone, they householded it. So not everybody, if you got 5 voters there, only one sample ballot went to that house. Because like Bill said, they don't want to spend a lot of money. We do the canvassing board activity for them. We actually do provide early voting. My staff will do it because we are capable, we're smaller enough to do that for them. And so there are a little different variances here, but the cities, they keep us involved because they know that that's not something that they do.
We have a question to our right.
Jennifer Adams. Thank you so much as a former legislative chair and board director for the League of Women Voters of Florida and multiple poll clerk for Bill. And thank you so much for the important work that all of you do, very, very, very much. That being said, in terms of the implementation and the funding and the issues that don't help, maybe aren't as helpful as they could be to you and the work that you're doing, what are your thoughts on whether or not our Secretary of State should continue to be an appointed position or go back to being an elected one?
Elected.
Elected, I probably voted for it to be appointed when it happened. That was a mistake. So it needs to be answered to the voters and not the governor.
I believe it should be elected.
Mr. Hayes?
Frankly, I don't care. I want somebody in that position that is going to follow the law. That's all it is. And whether R&D or whatnot, it doesn't make any difference to me.
And you said?
I said elected, and I would not run for it.
I'm not either.
We have a question to our right. Do you have somebody that's ready? Okay, let's go here.
I'll be quick. Ditto on the thank you for all you do. And I know that what you do costs money. You probably don't get enough of it. How can constituents help you get more money to do the things you need to do to make sure our elections are safe?
We are all funded by the general fund of the county budget. My county commissioners support everything I do. I've never had my budget request reduced or denied. And I'm very thankful for them. A lot of counties don't have that.
So,
Be brief.
show up to the county commission meetings and show your support, because if they see that you're backing us, they're more likely to support us as well.
Chris needs space.
Alan needs space. Alan's been fighting for 2.5 years to get space. We're moving in that direction again. But for the operational budget, I have had nothing but cooperation from my county commission. As a matter of fact, over the 7 years that I've been in charge, I have returned to them more than $3 million that I didn't use. So they like me when it comes budget time. But I have a group of people that work wisely. They use the money as if it were their own money, and we don't be foolish and just flitter away. And at the end of the fiscal year, we don't run around trying to spend. We look at our budget and we act responsibly.
And the Orange County Commission has been wonderful, very supportive over the years. Orange County will be needing to look at new location because we are beginning to outgrow it. Parking is the worst at our issue we have. I think the part that most do not realize, Mary Jane said we're event planners. We are building the budget 18 months before that general election. So we're having to look in the crystal ball. How many registered voters are we going to have? What will the turnout be like? And then you see something go flat where the turnout goes down. That's where you reward the county commission by giving them back the excess funds because you did have to spend that much because you build it based on that. So a lot of times that's a lot of crystal ball looking and making predictions of what's going to happen politically, election-wise, 18 months out.
Any more questions? Right here. And we're going to wrap this up pretty soon and let them give their final thoughts as well. It's only member questions today, I believe. Any more questions? Ladies first, we'll start with some closing remarks.
I tell my staff every day when I go to work, we do important work in our office. It's where democracy starts. Without our office and what we do, we wouldn't have a democracy. So it is terribly important that we do it correctly and do it right. I have a dedicated staff that I just couldn't wish or be further blessed than I am. I think it was Supervisor Hayes said, we don't know what party we are. We're just there to do a job. And my staff, they're fantastic. And I am a blessed person to have a job that makes a difference.
Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, to echo the staff, I couldn't ask for a better team. You know, they are the best elections team in the state of Florida because we all support each other. We come together as a team. I will tell you, please, you know, if you hear anything that is different than what you heard today, please contact us and let us know so we can address it. And I want to say something to Bill Cowles. The supervisor of elections, you become a new supervisor, we assign you a mentor. And when I became a new supervisor, I'm a registered Republican. I got assigned Bill Cowles as a Democrat. I would have never known the difference. Bill has always answered the phone for me. He's always been there. And he gave me one very critical piece of advice. He said, Chris, you need to go connect with your team. You need to go train your election workers. You need to be a part of the process, and then you need to go and work. And I just want to say to you, Bill, thank you for giving me that advice. I appreciate that. I appreciate everything you offered me in the advice. So thank you.
Yeah, I would echo that because Bill wasn't assigned to me, but he answered every phone call. And this is the cooperation, the teamwork that the people of Florida get to benefit from. And it's one of those untold stories, but it is so valuable and important to the process. And thank you and your colleagues for taking on us rookies and making us look like we knew what we were doing. But in looking at it from the other perspective, if one county goes down, we all look bad. So there is a reason for us to try to work together like that. I would say, please do everything you can to arm yourself with the truth. Get the facts and help us spread the word throughout your community, wherever it may be in your circle of influence, that says Florida elections are secure. They are being run in the most efficient, most effective way by a very dedicated group of professional men and women, including those workers out there in the polling places. We could never do what we do without them. And every one of those people are volunteers. They are compensated, but we as supervisors do not have the conscriptive powers that the draft board had. We can't make you come to work for us. So we thank them for coming, volunteering to go through the training and to do it at such a high level of excellence that they do. And the ideas that are floating out there that are so bizarre and backwards, just ignore them and go on and stand on the truth every day. That's the way to have a good, effective election.
Once in your life, be a poll worker.
Amen.
Yeah.
You will learn so much about elections that you think you know. It is a rewarding job. It is a tough job because you can deal with people at their very worst, but most people you're dealing with them at their very best. But I encourage everyone, once in their life, you only have to do it one time, go be an election worker. Figure out how elections really work.
And when you're voting this year, thank those election workers that are there. Go out of your way to say, we appreciate what y'all are doing.
And with that, I want to say thank you again for the opportunity to have served this community and to work with this community. And Mr. Hayes' comment, he made it earlier to me. I knew him before we really met in elections because his father and his mother were poll workers for Orange County at Beulah Baptist Church, and had to go out there every election and tell his dad to be quiet, doing too much political talking on that. So for that, and the other part too is you heard he was a dentist, and I made it very clear he's never put his hands in my mouth. But I think the word that I would close with is partnerships. It truly is partnerships. And as we sit here, there's so many of them, but let me just point out a few partnerships. I mean, there's the partnership with the media. I think one of the things I'll be accused of in the future is having been too accessible. And I'm waiting for that first phone call from Greg Fox.
It's coming.
On that. So from that standpoint, the school system, 2 school board members here, former school board member, yes, working with them, the partnership in the school. Many of you have been colleagues. Martha Haney down there is a officer with me, former county commissioner back here. The partnership with the board, the constitutional officers are very important. And then down here are my 2 attorneys. I think they're blended into one. Woody Rodriguez and Nick Shaneen on that partnerships all the way. And the other one that Jennifer brought up is about the legacy I will leave behind. That's called the Adopt a Precinct program, which has brought us more individuals into the process and help them understand. And they become our best ambassadors to talk about the success and the mechanism of the election. So how many have been an Adopt a Precinct organization or worked as an Adopt a Precinct one? Okay, so this next election, 127 of the 259 precincts are going to be adopted this year. So again, community participating, and to all of the wannabes in the room, you have a as well as the parties, and those are partnerships as well. So I appreciate the partnership and has happened this time, and I'll be watching from afar, because if you haven't heard, be moving to Indian Harbor Beach in Brevard County, and I'm going to be living next door to my youngest son and his 2 sons, my 8 and 12-year-old grandson. So it's going to be very special. The ocean's 1 mile from the front door. The intercoastal waterway is 1 mile on the other direction. And all they want me to do now is buy a golf cart so we can go around in our golf cart.
And we're all invited because we know where it is. Please give one more big round of applause for all 4 of our supervisors of elections. Thank you once again to Tiger Bay Club for having me. We have some more awards and closing remarks. I think we can all take our seats. Oh, no, don't move yet. I lied to you.
Special thank you to our Fang and Claw winner, and those of you who did not have the opportunity to ask a spicy question, I would encourage you to become a Tiger Bay member so you have the privilege and honor of asking a question. Today's winner is Brock. Our first question of the day. Rosser, if you would like to come up and get a photo with the panelists, that would be excellent. Thank you to our moderator today. We had a fabulous time. Our next meeting will be announced shortly. We're waiting on a VIP guest to join us. As soon as we get the official nod from our VIP panelists for next month, we will let you know. Again, if you are not a member, or if you know someone who would be an excellent Tiger Bay member, please encourage them to join Tiger Bay. Have a great afternoon.